something.
Did you put that
Yeah, so you can just stop it and we can fade in once I get over my nerves. I was doing my research and you consider this published entity. Welcome to Spotlight. I'm Rian Keating. Today we're at the Roundabout Theater where William Inge's acclaimed play, Come Back Little Sheba, has just opened to rave reviews. We're delighted to have the opportunity to interview the star, Shirley Knight. Miss Knight, welcome. This is a pleasure. I've admired your work for a long time.
Thank you.
You said for you to be attracted to a work, it has to have a center and a core. When you first read Come Back Little Sheba, what attracted you to it?
Well, I think the thing that attracts me most about the play, and particularly now that I'm doing it, is it has a resonance for everyone in the audience. There's something about the people that he's writing about, and I feel very close to the people because he writes about the Midwest. He's one of the few playwrights. I guess Lanford Wilson would be another. And it's as if everyone knows the people in the play. They know someone who has been an alcoholic or is involved in drugs, which is really the same in a way. Or they know someone who had to get married, or they know someone who has lost a dog, or whatever it is. They're so moved by the play, and they respond to it so beautifully, and I find that wonderful. And of course there are many people who've never seen this play, because this play was done in 1950, and this is the first time it's been done since in New York. So it's wonderful to bring it to people who don't know the play, and it hits them as a new play. And it's an interesting period in our history, I think, the early 50s, after the war, and people are trying to have a renaissance, and I'm enjoying it. Also, it's really my first true character role. She's a real character and has an interesting voice and an interesting walk, and I wear a fat suit, and it's sort of, I'm just having a lot of fun with that aspect of it too. It's a stretch. It's taken me a while to get to the role. For a while I was acting, the role was here, and I was sort of acting outside of it, and now I've become more a part of her, and it's going much better. Of course, I feel like as always, there's much more of a distance for me to go. I work very slowly, and I consider every performance another rehearsal, and I'm very fortunate because I'm going to be at the Roundabout until September 9th, so I have a good 2 months to get it right.
I guess, Shirley Booth, as we know, is really the definitive Lola. And
she was extraordinary in it.
Do you find that it's more of a help than a hindrance when you have somebody that's strong a character actress? Well,
no, it's neither really, because when you do a role, I played Blanche, for example, and you bring yourself to it. It becomes yours, and you really forget the other persons or people who have played the role. I watched the movie 2 weeks before I started rehearsal, and there was no danger of my imitating Shirley Booth because we are so totally different.
Absolutely.
No, it doesn't. I think the only role that has a kind of a curse on it, I would say, is the role of Stanley in A Streetcar Named Desire, because it was so totally identified with Marlon Brando that I think it's difficult for an actor to go beyond it or something, or to shake that image.
You had grown up in Mitchell, Kansas, which has 13 houses, one church,
correct.
and one
Very
school.
Small.
But your initial ambition was to be an opera singer.
That's correct.
Well, how did you get waylaid into acting?
Well, it's strange. You know, when you're a youngster, you make rash decisions, and of course I had no concept of how good I was at singing. I loved to sing, and I sang all the time. But when I was a junior in college at Wichita University in Wichita, Kansas, my singing teacher took me to a Maria Callas concert in Kansas City, and I sat there and I thought, I'll never be that good. So I just said, well, I'm not going to sing, then I should do something else. And I started studying English literature, and I thought very seriously about becoming a journalist. And Quite by accident I got into acting. It wasn't really anything I intended to do. Someone in the drama department asked me to be a part of Romeo and Juliet and deliver the prologue, and I did it. I thought it was very easy, and I thought, oh, I think I'll try this. It was really that absurd. And I decided to try it for only 2 years, and if I didn't do well, I would then go get a master's degree in journalism and become a journalist or a writer of some kind.
Well, you had worked for the Wichita Beacon as an interviewer, and Norman Cousins had given you some advice.
That's correct. I worked for, well, the university paper, of course, and then my English teacher got me a job to help put myself through school as an assistant society editor, writer for the Wichita Beacon. And so I got to interview people. I interviewed Robert Wagner and Virginia Mayo, Norman Cousins, and Jeff Hunter. Those were the famous people I interviewed. And as a 19-year-old, 18-year-old, that was quite a thing for me.
Well, you were the first one in your family to actually go to college.
Yes, that's correct. My family, we're home farmers, mostly farmers, and my father's in the oil business, but no scholars.
Did you find a lot of pressure from your family to finish college, or
not really? My father and mother were very concerned that I have a happy life, and they were concerned that I should not go to New York City, which they thought was a den of iniquity. And as things happened, I went to Los Angeles first, which they thought that was all right. They had no concept.
But you later said everything they write about Hollywood is true.
Well, I think, it's funny. Things that you say are outrageous sometimes. I think that most cliches are true. That's how they got to be cliches. And there are many cliches about Hollywood that are true in a way. People do have a tendency not to exist on a real level. The world there tends to be rather small. I'll never forget in the early 70s, I went to Los Angeles to do an Ingmar Bergman piece called The Lie on CBS. And my husband had just been in Israel writing about Palestinian-Israeli situation, and he flew home on a Saturday, and on Sunday was the massacre at Lord Airport. And I remember flying to Los Angeles 3 days later and absolutely still shaking because he could easily have been in the airport. And I remember mentioning it to someone and saying, "Isn't it dreadful, this massacre at Lord Airport?" And I said, "What? What do you mean? What are you talking about?" I mean, it wasn't a part of their world or their consciousness, and I found that disturbing.
Well, one thing I was intrigued with in my research, it seemed you had to conform if you wanted to be a success in Hollywood. And in order to do Sweet Bird of Youth, you had to do a piece of travesty called Ladies of the Mob.
Well, no, it wasn't called that. The ones I had to do House of Women and The Couch. One was a women's prison movie, and one was a sort of psychological thriller. And those two, Warner Brothers says, "We'll loan you out to MGM to do Sweet Bird of Youth, but first you have to do this." And they were really B movies. They were still making B movies in the early 60s, which is when I was under contract to Warner Brothers.
Did you find it hard not having artistic control of your career, being told to do something?
I think it's difficult to be an actress anyway, because you are told what to do, basically. It's easier in the theater because it does become more your own. I think it is difficult in films. But the thing about films that I found most frustrating, and I think probably the reason why I gravitate more to the theater, has to do with finishing one's work. Often in a film, you're just beginning. You're just starting to get it, and of course that's what ends up on the film, because there isn't a lot of rehearsal or a lot of reworking or what have you. And I think that's why often that the best film actors are what I call sort of natural film actors, like Spencer Tracy, who didn't really play characters. He basically played himself, and it was a beautiful self. James Stewart is another one. Gary Cooper is another one. I seem to be saying all men, but often I think that's the case. And I was interested in finishing my work, I think. I'm very proud of a film called Dutchman, which I felt really was finished because I'd done it in the theater.
Now, they were not allowed you to advertise this when you were doing it in Los Angeles in the theater, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yes. That was a scandal, actually, because we did two of Leroy Jones' plays, The Dutchman and The Toilet. Mm-hmm. This was in 1965. And we think of the 60s as being so revolutionary and not still oppressive or censorship. And in fact, The Toilet was not allowed to be printed in the Los Angeles Times. It was Dutchman and the T --. I also remember I was in an audience in 1964 in Los Angeles where Lenny Bruce was performing, and they came in and arrested him. And so, you know, things we take for granted now, we're not.
When you came to do the film of Dutchman, you had to do it in London.
We had to do it in England because, you know, they allow you to do films on the subways in New York. However, they read the script to Dutchman, mm-hmm. Which is quite violent, and a woman does kill a man on the subway. And they said, we can't let you do this because it's bad publicity for the subway, which is wonderful. So we built the set in England and did the film there, and it was fine.
All the reviews I could get a hold of it said it was such a wonderfully constructed film, and yet you did it in 6 days.
We did it in 6 days. I made £125. But it was ours, you know, it belonged mm-hmm. to us, and we worked so hard on it, and the producer, Gene Person, was so valiant and really tried so hard to get it done and wanted to get it done. And when you do something like that, I think the rewards are often wonderful. I mean, the film won the Critics' Prize in Cannes, and I won the Best Actress at the Venice Film Festival, and the film is still highly regarded. Mm-hmm. It's shown in universities all the time and in Europe, and I'm very proud of it.
Well, the subject matter was a white woman and a black man, excuse me.
Yes.
And this was before the Watts riots or Mayor Daley and the riots in Chicago.
Well, Leroy was really writing about everything, and is quite a revolutionary writer, an important writer, I think, in American literature. Very important as a poet and a dramatist.
Mm-hmm. You seem to have made a lot of concessions with your Hollywood career. It seemed that you could have been a major star, but you seem to... There was one interview.
I know. I think there's something wrong with me. I keep throwing away being a star. My children have never forgiven me because I was offered Dallas, and they've often said, "Mom, we could have been rich," you know. And of course we could have, and we would have been living in Los Angeles, and I would be on Dallas every week. But I don't think I would be terribly artistically fulfilled. Which is not putting down Dallas, which is wonderful. I'm not doing that. I'm just talking about one's own needs, mm-hmm. which are different from other people's needs. You know, I seem destined to be poor, or at least middle class. Not. I doubt I shall ever have a lot of money.
Well, you had said during your first marriage you were very career conscious, but yet that seemed to change, and you needed to strive for a more supportive self-image. How did that evolve? The realization that
well, I married really too young, and my first husband, who was a wonderful man, we really were not suited for one another. You know, we were very different. Also, I think we were both terribly busy, and often when people are so busy, working all the time, I mean, I would do things as insane as, for example, when I was doing the film of Sweet Bird of Youth, I was performing every night in the play Little Mary Sunshine in a theater in Los Angeles. I mean, I wouldn't dream of doing anything like that now. That's insane to do that much work. And as a result, the relationships suffered, of course. I made a decision when I was 30 years old that I wanted to, that my life was going to be the most important thing, and that my career would come out of that life. And I'm very grateful that I did, because I have an extraordinary, supportive, brilliant husband. I have 2 daughters who are amazing, is the only word for them. They're both very beautiful, they're both very loving and kind and wonderful at everything they do, and they love me. And I think had I been a mother who was never there, who was always working, who was flying off to Japan to do a movie or whatever it was, I wouldn't have that in my life. And I would end up at 45 without anything except this sort of career. And I think I would be very unhappy. I'm sure other people would not be, but I would be.
You were bicontinental for a while, and your
Yes.
children spent their formative years in London. Did you find it difficult bringing them back here to New York City?
Well, in some ways, yes, because we were living in the country in England in a big Edwardian house. It was beautiful, and we moved to Manhattan, to the gay ghetto. I mean literally, Washington Street, in the Village, and that was quite a shock. You know, leather and chains for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It could get to anyone after a while, but they're both resilient and tough, and they, I think, I mean, Kate is here somewhere. I think she enjoyed growing up. Didn't you enjoy growing up in the Village, Kate? Yes, Mom. So, my oldest daughter, Kate, I tried very hard to keep her out of show business, but unfortunately she's extraordinarily gifted, much more gifted than I ever was, and she's now 20 and entering show business. And she just got her first role in a movie, and she and I are doing a musical together in the autumn, so it's thrilling. I'm just so excited. I'm more excited about that than anything I do. So excited for everyone to see her and see how wonderful she is.
What's the basis of the musical?
It's the two of us. We're just singing a lot of songs. Morton DaCosta's directing it, and he's sort of a one-man crusade to ensure that Kate Hopkins, my daughter's name, is convinced she's going to be a star within months, and I hope he's right. I'm sure he will be right. And we're very excited about it. It's going to be a lot of things, just a lot of sort of personal things and songs that we've sung together since she was a baby, and songs I've been singing that I sang with my sister when she and I were growing up, that we sang at church or at schools, and modern things and songs that Kate has written herself, which are wonderful, very modern.
Well, it sounds
songs.
terrific.
I'm going to do a tap dance, and she's going to do a flash dance. So it's just going to be wonderful.
Well, it should be a very eclectic evening. You were in a film called Playing for Time, and the scene I remember most concretely from it is when your surrogate son is taken to the gas chamber.
Yes.
And you come into the music
Wasn't
camp.
she horrible? Didn't I play an awful person in that?
But the thing that vindicated her character is when you asked Fania to sing an aria from Madame Butterfly. And it was all a reaction, your performance. Do you find that more of a challenge than when you actually have lines to say? Is it harder to react?
Gosh, I don't know. That's an interesting question. I think that pure acting at its very best is when you don't know what's going to happen next. When you arrive at a state where the performance is so concrete that you've said something and you don't know what the other person is going to say. And when they say whatever it is, you don't know how you're going to react, and you don't know what you're going to say next. And that gives an immediacy about it that the audience sort of is like this in anticipation. Whereas if you do what I call sort of ordered acting, they're able to sit back and sort of say, oh yes, I understand what that's like or whatever, but they don't participate in it because they're not affected by it. I love tearing an audience apart. I love them not knowing what is going to happen. I love shaking them up. That's why I adored doing John Hopkins' play Losing Time, because we caused riots and people stood up and shouted at us and left and threw things at us, all sorts of things. And I love that. I just love that, because I think that's the function of theater. It's the function of art and religion, after all, for us to look at ourselves and look at the world and see what we can do about it.
Do you feel that when performers are in the media headlines or very well known, that they should take on the responsibility to express their views through the press? I know you were very against corporal punishment in schools, and you had been outspoken about it.
Well, I'm on the National Committee for Handgun Control, which is the thing that I work hardest for. Often people will say, well, I'm not political, and so I don't discuss politics, and I laugh, because we're all political. If you buy a postage stamp, it's a political act, and if you pay taxes, that's really a political act. So you are political, if you know what I mean. So I think that if something is wrong, it doesn't matter where it is, what country it is, what state it is, what city it is, what town it is, what room it is. It's wrong, and we have an obligation as human beings to put it right. It's wrong that we live in the most violent country in the world, the United States of America, which is supposed to be the most civilized. It's wrong that people are allowed to own guns and go around killing, slaughtering people at the rate of 25,000 people a year. And it's escalating all the time. This is bad and wrong and makes us absurd in terms of human beings, but also absurd in terms of the rest of the world who have laws to govern their people against that kind of violence. And it's incomprehensible that it exists, but hopefully we'll arrive soon at a place where we'll be able to eradicate it. Sorry, I get quite angry when I think about it.
Well, it seems the world's rather apathetic towards it.
I think that sometimes people accept things because they feel that they cannot change them, and they're wrong. You can change anything about yourself and about the people around you, the world around you. There's always hope. It may seem that there isn't hope. It may seem that pollution is going to overtake the world. It may seem as if there's going to be a nuclear war. It may appear that everyone eventually will own guns and will go out in the street. But that isn't necessarily true. And if you, as a human animal, you must believe that there's hope. Otherwise, I don't know how you go on. I mean, you just sit there and say, well, there's no hope, so I just think I'll die and not do anything. And often I think I'm beaten down, you know. I think I can't get up today and fight this fight, whatever it is. But you can, and you must, my goodness.
Well, you've taken 4 years off from acting to be a mother and live in London with your husband. How did that change your perception of your acting career? Was it hard to go back?
No, I never thought it'd be difficult to go back. I think that's because I'm extremely arrogant about my work. I think that acting is arrogance, actually. I think that you must be arrogant as part of acting. I say it to all the acting students. It's arrogance in the fact that as an actress you say, I can do anything. I can feel anything. I can bare my soul, which acting also is. You must not be ashamed of anything that you are, so you must have a total lack of fear. So when I went back to acting, it was just like I'd never left, because I knew what I could do. And I made the assumption that I could. I never make the assumption that I can't, because of course if I make the assumption you can't, it's all, a positive thing.
Do you have a hard time juggling your career along with your marriage and,
yes.
and being a mother?
Yes, I mean, it would be wonderful if I could say, no, I have no trouble, I just have no trouble. But I tell you, when I'm in rehearsal for Come Back, Little Sheba, and I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get my daughter up and get her breakfast, to get her out of bed. She's 15, that's a major achievement. Then to give her breakfast, then to drive her to school, and then to get my husband up, and then to get on the train, and then to work all day, and then to, and then to come home and try to fix dinner or plan dinner, The family helps a lot. I'm not saying I'm this super mom, but I am, of course. But it is hard. Sure, it's hard. So you have to really want to do it. You can't just say, well, I'm working, and you all will just have to get along as best you can. I mean, I'm not allowed to do that. I took them on, so I can't reject them in the moment of, Although I do. Sometimes when I'm working, I have a tendency to forget a few things, like, she's supposed to be it's the day she's supposed to go in where the orthodontist adjusts the braces, and Mom forgets, major tragedy.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. You can cut. You'll be cutting to
you,
right?
Will. I just lost my train of thought. There was something I wanted to quote. Well,
we can talk about anything. We talk about this play, which is so wonderful, and everybody in it's wonderful, don't you think? I hope you did. You saw it, right?
What I am curious is, do you find that because this has taken place in a time past, although when it was first produced it wasn't considered, it was current, do you find that these problems still exist, or there's more awareness to recognizing your problem and solving it?
I imagine there is. I think that there may not be the stigma on being an alcoholic that there was in 1950. Also, I think there are many things that are different in the, well, for example, in the play, he says they put the alcoholics in right with the crazy people. You were considered insane. And that certainly has changed. And Alcoholics Anonymous is a remarkable organization, and there are many others. And I think that aspect is different. I suppose it's not quite as shocking in 1984, too, that the young girl sleeps around. You know, that was quite shocking in 1950. It's still quite shocking, though, really. I think. Don't you think, Kate? Yes.
Well, I think to have such a cavalier attitude about it, as she seems to have.
Yes, I don't think young people... I think young people are the same, really. I look at my daughters, and they seem to be very like I was, and have the same sort of problems that I had when I was a teenager.
Do you think society...
I mean, they don't have the problem. I was quite plain, and they're both extraordinarily beautiful. But...
Do you think America's values are becoming more conservative now that the sexual revolution seems to be over, and
I don't know. That's
there's a Republican in the White House?
There's a Republican in the White House. I think that's hard to say. It seems to go in swings, doesn't it? There was the 20s, which was all wild, and then the 30s, where women decided they were going to, that was about the third women's revolution, and then the 40s, where the war was on, and then the 50s, where it got very conservative again, and then the 60s, which we know what happened, and the 70s, and now we're in the 80s, and it's maybe in a little more of a conservative thing. I think all the same things still go on the whole time. There's always the left, and there's always the right, and there's always people who think Ronald Reagan is unsuitable for his job, and there are people who think that he's all right. I don't know. I think that there are things that are present in 1980 that certainly were not present when I was in high school. The youngsters have to cope with. For example, when I went to high school, the absolute worst thing was if someone smoked a cigarette or, God forbid, had a can of beer. Well, that is not the case now. It's marijuana or pot or angel dust, or marijuana and pot are the same. Angel dust or cocaine. I think that problem is very different, and I think that affects youngsters' lives in a way that cigarette smoking or alcohol did not affect ours. It wasn't that frightening. It wasn't. It wasn't scary that your friends might die they wouldn't die from smoking cigarettes, I mean, not maybe in years to come, but you know what I'm saying.
Well, your work has certainly given a lot of people insight on their lives, and I think it's a very healing process. And I appreciate you taking time to talk with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. This is Rian Keating, and you've been watching Spotlight with guest Shirley Knight.